Hello, guys. Apologies for the weird get up. I just got over a cold, so I'm trying to keep it safe over here. So, a friend of mine who is not a former Soviet citizen and who kind of is, I don't want to say he's apolitical, but he's not really in the as we call in Russia, as we say in Russian, в теме. He doesn't really think about these things so much. He has his own business, he's not in like the corporate world. So he said to me, well, Tzvi, the stuff you're talking about, the woke stuff and everything like that, they represent the minority of society, and they are on the fringes of society, and they don't really have any power. And I said to him, my friend, you are incorrect. This is, as I said in another video, this is basically the modern day version of Bolshevism. It's Bolshevist tactics. And I said, what do I mean by that? I mean that 5 or 10% of the population can captivate and capture the minds and the hearts of the rest of society via either terror, like physical terror, or just ideological subversion, or just ideological fascism, ideological and social fascism. And by the way, as they do it, they're going to accuse anyone who disagrees with them of being what? A fascist. And he said to me, Tzvi, well, what do you mean? Like, again, they don't have all the power. I said, really? They don't have all the power? My friend, you, unfortunately, or fortunately for you, you don't work in the corporate world. Actually, neither do I. But I know people who work in the corporate world, okay? And, I go on places like LinkedIn and other places, and you see every other person, or more than every other person. I would say 75% or 80% of the people out there who I know, who I consider, so to speak, normal, have what on their profiles? Things like pronouns, right? So I use the example for my friend. I said to him, dude, something very simple. Imagine you... Sorry guys, there's a bunny here. It's very funny. Hopefully no one snatches him and, does what they did to Peanut. God forbid. So imagine that you fell asleep in a cryogenic chamber. If you guys ever seen the movie Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone. And you fell asleep in the year 2010, let's say, 2009, 2010, even 2012, right? And you woke up today and you saw everything around you. Not only saw, but you heard stuff like these pronouns, you heard different terminology. Now, Tzvi, you could say, Tzvi, well, isn't that true for all eras of history, where there's always new terminology and always new language and always new ideas and always new stuff that the older generation doesn't get. It's like a typical thing, the whole, I call it the kids today phenomenon, right? It's always like that, right? I'm already finding myself saying stuff that older people said when I was a kid. Oh, kids today, or young people today. It's like normal, right? True. But we never had a situation where people had to be told or if people felt the need to tell other people their gender in public, specify, and force others to call them by a particular pronoun or gender or whatever it is. Either force them socially via shaming them, or calling them a bigot if they don't, or calling them whatever, I don't know, homophobe, whatever it is, some pejorative if they don't. And if you go to a place like Canada, passing laws where you're forced to do so, and if you don't, you can end up like Jordan Peterson and lose your legal, not your legal, excuse me, your your professional license. In his case, psychologist, psychiatrist, okay? And I think MD as well. I don't know if he's MD, but he's for sure a psychologist. So, my friends, that is the modern day version of Bolshevism. Right? This is what Bolsheviks did. 5 to 10% of the country captivated what we call in Hebrew the ruach, the spirit of the rest of the country, to the point where people are afraid to say what they really feel. And so my friend said to me, well, Tzvi, again, I mentioned this at the beginning, he said, these people in the fringes of society, no, they should be, but they're not. They're the, so to speak, the mainstream of society, or they've captivated the mainstream of society. They've sucked all the normal people in, right? And if you are just so happen to have enough guts and balls and chutzpah to resist what they want, or not even, or just to omit, or not participate, then you are on the fringes of society. Meaning somebody like me and others like me are effectively on the fringes of society, as it were, because we're not participating in this. You know, we're basically like in some kind of a parallel world, economy, what have you, folks. In the same way, my friends, I'll leave you with this, that for this very reason, this is why these polls, by the way, the polls that you see for this election are largely BS. Why? Just in the same way people are afraid to say what they really feel, and they just adhere. Let's say if they work in the corporate world, they adhere to all this pronoun stuff, all the DEI stuff, all the ESG stuff, and all the stuff that their overlords want them to adhere to, because those overlords are controlled by these Gnostic fruitcake cultists, the CEOs and the people who are in charge of the CEOs and what have you, above them. There are people who are above the CEOs. So in that same way, people are afraid to answer the polls truthfully, right? Because, you could say, well, Tzvi, what's the big deal? Like somebody just calling their house, right? No, folks. I mean, if somebody, if you already realize that you live in like basically a kind of a Soviet-style dystopian society, and you know that somebody has your address and phone number and everything else, and your email and all your information, why would you say something that may not be to the person's liking, the person on the other end of the line? You're going to keep that information private. So, folks, if you're seeing, these polls are like 50-50, 51-49, 48-52, it's BS. People are not answering truthfully, or they just don't answer, or the people that answer are mostly part of the, so to speak, cult class. Or also there's margin of error, right? So, my friends, in reality, probably the real thing is like 75-25. And if you count, and I'm not even going to get into it, but if you count the schmeeding, it's going to end up being, presented as 55-45, or I'm sorry, the reality is 75-25. It's going to be presented as 55-45, or I don't know, 52-48, and they're going to, and the rest of the story. My friends, here's the irony of the whole thing. These people who are using Bolshevist tactics to push their fruity, Gnostic fruitcake, demonic ideology in the actual Soviet Union would be locked up in Russian what's called psychushka, in the mental hospital. That's the irony of the whole thing, my friends. And now they've managed to co-opt that ideology for their own purposes. But here's the thing, guys. This thing is designed to be self-consuming. Why? Because they align themselves with people who, in their countries of origin would despise them. Who? The Islamists. Islam, right? So what's going to end up happening? One of two things is going to happen, or both. The Islamists will eat these so-called wokes, right? because Islamists, my friends, I always say, this whole Project 2025 thing that they're trying to latch on to Trump, Muslims in America, or Muslims all over the world, for sure in America, will sooner adopt the tenets of Project 2025, will sooner support, will sooner vote for Project 2025 than any other non-Muslim or Christian ever will, or even Orthodox Jew. Muslims will, my friends. And the second thing that's going to happen is, once these people get into power, the ones who want to rule, they are going to ignore all the wokes at best. Because, listen, at the end of the day, folks, you have to do what's called normalization. You have to run a society. You need the society to function, meaning you need to have an economy. You can't just have people, like being in the poorhouse complaining about this and that and the other, right? You have to have some sort of semblance of, people have to have salaries and livelihoods and whatever. And we're gonna continue. I mean, it's gonna be like soft tyranny, right? And the people that thought that these people would help them, the people that they voted for, will be ignored and will be just forgotten about, right? That's at best. At worst, I don't really want to say what. So, my friends, just as in all of these societies, the worst case scenarios is, skulls that are piled up higher than the Tower of Babel. Listen, I hope it doesn't lead to that in this country, in America, but you never know. At the moment, I can see soft tyranny. So, my friends, that's just to, expound on what I said in a previous video and to explain to anybody who didn't live in the Soviet Union or whose parents are not from the Soviet Union, who doesn't understand how 5 or 10% of a particular population of a country can captivate via terror or social fascism the rest of the country. All right, my friends. Tomorrow's an interesting day, and like Rebbe Kessin says, we'll see what happens.